What is up, everybody? Welcome to Alive. This is Alive for real estate agents and consumers alike. Let's see here, going live on Instagram. Looks like we're here. All right. What's up, guys? I'm Jeremy Kane, the Real Estate Agent Playbook. I just wanted to hop on here and talk about the recent NAR decision to settle the big Sitzer-Burnett case. We did receive an email as members of NAR today that looked like this, right? And essentially it talks about the basically proposed settlement. And as we kind of go through this, there's some key points that I'm just going to cover. And then I would love for people to hop on and comment and do all the things. If you're watching over on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, you might have to allow StreamYard to allow you. But if not, let's jump in and just chat about it. So release of liability, the agreement will release NAR and over 1 million members, all state and local real estate associations, owned MLSs, and brokerages with NAR members as principal that had residential transactional volume, of X. NAR's fought the good fight they're putting out here. Obviously, there are some groups that are a part of this case that have not been released because they're not a part of the settlement. I would assume that this company here that's still involved in that would also add some sort of release of liability if they did settle. Essentially, the big news is the compensation offers moved off of the MLS, which is interesting to me. They do say that, written agreements will now be required by their members, which buyers, stuff should probably absolutely be buyers' settlement statement, or I'm sorry, buyers' agreements are certainly something that they've been telling us to do for a long time, but now they're requiring it. The settlement, $418 million over 4 years. That is massive. And then they mentioned that they deny any wrongdoing. This is just a settlement to kind of move the information forward. So pretty cool there. I guess that they're putting this out there. And again, this is just a proposal for settlement. It does need to be approved by the DOJ and all the things. So pretty cool stuff going on to get this off of the table. There will be some changes. A couple things I wanted to kind of point out while we're looking at this. One of the things about compensation is that they will not allow for co-op compensation to be offered. However, it could still be a part of the listing agreement and could still be used. It just cannot be noted on the MLS, which maybe it's an extra step for agents, but it's ultimately something that people can get on board with and look at. The thing here that they mention with compensation is that seller concessions for things like buyers' closing costs could be advertised on the MLS. Now, one thing that I just want to bring to everyone's attention, if you're watching over on YouTube or whatever, I'm sharing the screen, is that there are limits on what concessions can be offered for certain types of loans. So I just wanted to point that out. Obviously, in our current market here in Denver, at least, we do see some closing costs and concessions being made, even in competitive offerings, because ultimately it's about the net, right, that goes to the sellers that they're really concerned about. So if the agent is out there offering those concessions or, negotiating those concessions for their buyer, it's usually pretty important just to make sure that the seller understands what their net take home is going to be. So as we kind of break into this, the conventional one's only sliding scale. If you're less than 10% down, you can only have a 3% concession. Now, that's 3% would cover most of your closing costs, depending on how it is. I actually just had my first ever maxed out concession close, and it was this 3% of the purchase price that needed And that could be used for anything as far as prepaids, escrows, and lending costs and things like that, which oddly enough can get lumped in there. And then obviously what the NAR kind of explanation is saying is that you can offer seller concessions, you just can't offer a co-op in advertising. So 3%, that's really the most affected, right? If you're a first-time home buyer using those low down payment options that are out there, that's where things will really, start affecting if you're, considering as a buyer's agent using these closing costs and prepaids to, offset that buyer agency fee that you've agreed on in your buyer's agency. So that's the one that's really in question here. Obviously, another one would be conventional for investment. Typically, the buyers in these conventional investment kind of loans and things would or should have a little bit more option to compensate than these kind of first-time home buyers in these conventional. So this certainly will affect the first-time home buyer conventional, the low down payment. Now, once you get between 10 and 25%, 6%, there's a lot of room there. Typically, your closing costs aren't going to be much more than 2 or 3%. So there's that. And then above 25% is obviously the 9%. The thing that is, kind of backwards here is the people that are putting 25% down certainly could, have the cash on hand. The 6%, that are, 10 to 25%, it's a little less, but they're, still covered because 6% is quite the number. You're not going to see that unless you're getting into some big time buy downs, which with these high interest rates, we sometimes see. And then you have the 3% on closing costs, which is absolutely something that you can look at. So this is just something that I wanted to point out to you. Obviously not saying that this will be the way, but this is now what they're saying within the settlement, which is not accepted yet by the DOJ, that this would, be the change. So conventional is kind of a sliding scale. If you're on Instagram, you can slide over to my YouTube channel, The Real Estate Agent Playbook, or my Facebook, Jeremy Kane, or Twitter, JKCO Realtor _ to check this out because you can see the screen share. And then moving on, FHA, you have 6%. You got some extras there beyond the closing cost prepaids and discount points. As well, the VA up to 4%, USDA 6%. So VA, certainly could get in there. The closing costs, there is the funding fee and all those things that kind of go into that VA loan, which, the VA can roll into, some of that can roll into the, principal and all of that. So the big effector here is this first-time home buyer under a conventional or the VA here, because 6% is a pretty large amount as it comes to closing costs and that stuff, unless you're working on the buy downs and that. So as agents, just like to point this out there that, as listing agents, we can't probably just step back and be like, okay, well, we're just going to offer, a concession equal to whatever commission we're offering, because it will have limitations. Also, make sure that as a buyer's agent, if your buyer is required to pay your commission and they're in maybe one of these lower brackets, make sure that you're aware of that, because the concessions can be used for a lot of different things. But there are maximums that could come into play. So that's kind of where I wanted to point out that major difference, because as agents, we will see the change. One thing that they did say that they would be changing, it would come into effect July 2024. And so, people are mad about it, happy about it, whatever. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, that's an amazing, thing. Ultimately, it just adds one more step. Now, what I don't know is how we're taking it from something that's put out there, offered as a marketing tool by the seller, right? If you want to market your property, it's almost like these commissions are kind of like a protected class and we can't advertise them, which is kind of an odd deal here. So that's the first part of that I'm a little bit concerned about is, people are like, oh, this is great. The experts are going to get good at their job and they're going to have to do this and that. Okay, here's the deal. We just need to have honest conversations and understand. The biggest impact that I think that it's going to have is on those people that are a little bit cash strapped, right? We all know that we've had clients that are saving their last pennies to get that minimum down payment or that minimum closing costs. And those are the ones that are going to be mostly affected. Ultimately, if you come across you know, a negotiation where the seller isn't willing to, include a compensation and there's no cash. And then we have agents that are, not willing to work for free and all those things, which I don't think agents should work for free. But I think that there will be a little bit of adjustment here. And, it's all about documentation, right? So now we're taking away the documentation piece by saying you can't advertise it in MLS. Well, is that an extra form? Because we all know the conversation, right? You got to get things in writing. So what's that look like as we move forward? We don't know. And ultimately we will probably have some things handed down by our brokerages and all the things that will come into play. And at the end of the day, it's just give us the rules and let's play in the sandbox, right? If nothing else, this adjustment is what I've been saying all along. Dial in what you do differently, dial in your skills, your unique value proposition, so that there's a reason to be compensated, right? I'm not the guy that says, oh, it's, buyer's agents are going for a free ride. The free ride's over. That's not how it is. And 99% of the agents I work with do an absolutely amazing job on the other end. So let's come together. Let's work through this. Let's have the conversations. Let's, as a listing agent, as a buyer's agent, have these conversations about ABC, what could happen, what's out there. Obviously, in our listing agreements in Colorado, it's set out like, hey, this is what I'm going to pay you, and this is what you're going to offer the other side. There might need to be some verbiage change in our contract there. However, I think it's very important to remain ethical and follow that, because I've talked to a lot of people. They're like, well, what happens when people, have 6% and then, no one mentions, hey, buyer's agent commission, like there's no agreement there, right? And then that's not paid and the listing agent just takes 6%. Misrepresentation there, in my opinion. So there's a lot of things that need to play out here, but just wanted to come on and say it's a positive thing that we are getting closer to giving us rules in the sandbox so we can play. And I hope that everybody tuning on, we got a lot of people on live on all the multiple platforms. Let me know what you think. Reach out if you have a conversation. I am currently working on a foundations course for real estate agents to help kind of build their foundations and how, to go about building a business, because I think that there's a lot of distraction and all of that. But then I think we will also come out after, probably in the fall sometime with a unique value proposition, how to build that, how to have these conversations that will absolutely help with this. So at the end of the day, we have more answers. It's not a final settlement. It's not something to take home, and write about. Keep in mind those closing costs for those concessions, because that's exactly where it's going is, okay, well, now we can advertise concessions. And that's where it could come into play. And then again, you have on Instagram, somebody just said, I'm afraid for VA buyers. I believe in the VA wording, there is something that says that the buyer's agents can't be paid by the buyer or something along those lines. So that's certainly something to be considered. Maybe this concession can't be rolled into the buyer's agent fee if that's something that happens. However, it should offset the closing costs, kind of like, maybe inspection items that have come up as concessions at some point in the game. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. But I just wanted to hop on here, come together as a community. And if you guys need anything, please reach out. If you have any questions before that course comes out, I'd be happy book a realtor game plan call with me. You can follow me on all the channels. Currently, I'm live on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and all the things. So I hope this helps. And just wanted to kind of raise your eyebrows at the limitations on that concession, because when I first heard it, it's like, oh, well, you can advertise concession, you just can't advertise commission. Well, can the buyer's agency fee technically be a concession? That's all stuff that that we'll probably get the answers to here shortly. So I hope that helps everybody. I hope you guys have a good weekend. And the good news is we're closer to having the rules to play the game. And I know that everybody on here in my community will love that, I hope. So hope you guys have a good one. Like, comment, subscribe, reach out. Love to chat with you guys soon. Bye-bye.